Episode 10 of Talent Jockey.
You're listening to Talent Jockey Podcast,
a show for job seekers, recruiters, and hiring managers.
Here's the guy that interviewed himself for a job and denied his own offer. Your host, Shawn Kelly.
Thanks for joining in. I'm your host, Shawn Kelly, like the lady said. And this is Talent Jockey, a podcast for job seekers, recruiters, and hiring managers, just like the woman said. And I provide advice and guidance into the world of talent acquisition, trying to make it a win-win-win situation for all three parties. So let me know what you think of the new intro. Obviously, it's new. I did some splicing, and I looked for some voice talent, and I think I found quite a talent. And she was nice enough to record some blurbs for me. And then I spliced it into some effects. And I don't do audio, video, graphic design for a living. I don't. But I've done my own logos. So I did the Talent Jockey logo. I did the voiceover splicing. Obviously the music was something I purchased online. And I put it all together. And a lot of the tools that I use, I kind of fumble through. And it probably takes me 10 times longer to do anything and get any of that accomplished and finished. Where if I just, if I picked my buddy Steve's brain or got him to do it, who's a very talented designer, graphic artist, as well as web, it'd probably take him like 5 minutes. And me, it takes me like 5 days. But that's all right. It's learning. I like it because I learn a little bit more, and it empowers me to do it myself. And I think it provides a little bit more. Well, I don't know. It's hard. It's a different relationship that I'd have with the work that I put out. And I'm kind of. It's not like I wrote a book or anything, but anyways, drop me a note and let me know what you think of the intro. Even just is it too loud? Is it too soft? I kind of like it. It breaks up that music, introduces the show a little bit, puts a little pizzazz in there, makes it sound a little more professional maybe. I don't know. I'm open to feedback. Shawn at talentjockey.com. Shawn with an EAN. Much appreciated. So I got an email from, ironically enough, Shawn. And I will read just briefly some of the email that he mentions, which is, what's the best way for a job seeker to handle the "what are your salary requirements?" question? He says, I'm attaching a link to a recent article on LinkedIn that argues for politely refusing to give out your salary history, but instead be upfront about your salary requirements. I'd love to hear your take on this. How many jobs would I remove myself from the running for if I took that advice? And then he provides a link. And I will put this in the show notes. So the article that he's talking about, so this is going to be a little bit about salary negotiations. I think it's a very good article. I like how the author writes it. And so I give her some props. She's a little edgy. I think she's kind of picking at me a little bit personally, even though we don't even know each other, right? I'm like, wait a minute, she's talking about me. But then again, I'm putting myself in the boat that she thinks is not in that's in a negative bucket. And I don't think I'm that person though. So it's kind of weird. Anyways, we'll go into it a little bit. I'll read some details out of the article for you, and I'll provide a link in the show notes so you can read it in full. But essentially what it is it's written, Shawn found it, I think, on LinkedIn, and it was written by, well, that's ironic because I clipped it, and okay. So it's weird. I have it clipped in Evernote, which I use on occasion, but it didn't bring over the author's info. Lucky for everybody, I have the actual author in front of me. So Liz Ryan is the person who wrote this. She's the CEO and founder of Human Workplace. Now, I looked up human workplace because I think it's good to understand. I've read articles about how LinkedIn is killing recruiting, and then the author is an actual competitor of LinkedIn. So you kind of have to understand who's writing the article from what perspective and why. So Liz, I looked up her business a little bit just to see kind of who she is and what she does, and I'll let her know that we're talking about her. And I think she'll like it regardless of what I say, just because it'll maybe give her a little more spotlight. Not that she needs it by any means, but her organization does recruiting consulting, ironically enough, which is something that I'm looking into getting. So I respect her position and what she's doing and her experience. She's been around for quite some time. It sounds like she's been in corporate recruiting as a VP for years, and now she offers advice to organizations as well as candidates. And it seemed, now I didn't go into all her videos online, but there was a lot of candidate advice on her website. Also, you can become a member of her website. So I'm not plugging Liz. I'm just trying to establish herself and how that ties into what we're about to talk about. Because if you're a company that represents individuals and you are going to talk about salary, you're going to have a different angle than if you're representing organizations. And Liz seems to do both. So she's not overly one-sided versus the other. Okay. And it's funny because she brings up some points in the article where I'm like, yes, absolutely, totally get it. And then all of a sudden I'm getting, somebody like myself might be getting slammed for, how I would practice or go about dealing with salary. And then I think, oh, that's awesome. Again, so there's this kind of weird dynamic that I have with how she wrote this article and what she's getting at. So let's get into it. So the title is How to Answer What Was Your Last Salary? Okay. And what she does is go into basically saying that you have to be ready to answer it. Okay. Somebody's going to ask you, how do you answer it? And she goes into, you have to step out of the standard sheepy job seeker frame and realize that you are an equal partner in the hiring process. You are not a lowly ant who has to crawl over piles of broken glass to get a job. Now, I totally am on board with her. And what she's basically saying is, for whatever reason, employers have always seemed to think that they are holding all the cards, and they're not. And they need to realize that. And it hasn't changed in the industry. A lot of them still think, hey, I have the vacancy. That person's applying for the job. That person's probably not, it doesn't have a job, or they're unsatisfied with the job that they have. So they're going to want my job. They're going to be, for lack of better words, desperate for my job. And that is not the case nowadays. They have to get over that. Now, some candidates also do take what her perspective is from that candidate side, where they feel desperate. So they, feel as though, well, it's their call. Well, no, not necessarily. You have to be able to, you have to be the one that can also walk away if it's not a job that you want to pursue. It's not an opportunity that fits what you're looking for. I just think she phrased it wrong by just saying sheepy job seeker frame. I don't know. It's kind of like the For Dummies books. They may be good, but they're still calling everybody they're still calling people dummy. So I totally understand what she's saying, and I think she's spot on. I just don't like how she phrased it. Okay, enough of that nitpicking. Going on, she says, you're not a lonely ant. But anyways, if you have to see the inappropriateness of the question, what was your last salary, first before you go, you can use our high mojo response to it. It is none of an employer's business what you were paid in any past job. They will tell you that it is their business, quoting Liz. They will tell you that you're being difficult by refusing to hand over your pay stubs. Unscrupulous recruiters will tell you that they must know your past salary and that you'll be dropped from the recruitment pipeline immediately if you don't hand it over. They will huff and puff, Read the comments after the story if you enjoy watching recruiters huffing and puffing. So again, Liz, I think you're I don't question your experience and your expertise, but man, you're just kind of coming across more. I just don't like the approach that you're taking. Anyways, that's just me, and she could tell me to pound sand. I don't care. So again, I do agree with her to a point, but I've never had the part where it says they will tell you that you're being difficult by refusing to hand over your pay stubs. Now, I hope she's figuratively speaking that. I've never had a recruiter or I've never had a peer in the industry ask for pay stubs. Now, I have to think that she's just kind of throwing that out there as kind of a figure of speech. I don't know. Unscrupulous recruiters will tell you that they must know your past salary. Are they unscrupulous because they're asking you for your past salary? I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think that may be harsh too. Now, granted, some recruiters, again, if I think it was episode 9, why some recruiters suck. There is some things that recruiters do that are not, they just don't do well in recruiting. I don't know if I would call them unscrupulous if they ask for your past salary. And being dropped from the recruiting pipeline immediately if you don't hand it over, that may just be poorly trained recruiters. Somebody that wasn't probably mentored the correct way in handling certain situations. I don't know. Could be a corporate policy. And they're being driven to do that. And they will huff and puff. Maybe it's staffing. Staffing may not work with you because they need that info. I don't know. And I've even worked in staffing firms. I've worked in a staffing firm where, maybe the firm is really good, but the recruiter sucks. So there's a disconnect between, so you get one recruiter in the same firm and they're awesome, and you get another recruiter in the same firm and they suck. It's not really the company, though. It's just the individual, which kind of muddies the waters when it comes to good or bad recruiting in staffing firms. So anyways, she goes into say scummy recruiters. Of course they say they must have your salary details. They want to maintain the negotiating advantage over you. Leave them in the dust. Scummy recruiters like that cannot help you. Scummy recruiters. So and the reason this kind of tweaks my ear a little bit is because I do ask for salary, but I wouldn't consider myself a scummy recruiter. Right? An unscrupulous recruiter. I think anybody that knows me, now, of course, she's not writing this to Shawn Kelly like, hey, you do this and you're unscrupulous. But I think she's lumping a lot of us in one bucket, which is unfortunate. I mean, even my, some recruiters suck episode, I don't lump every recruiter sucks. It's not the case. There's some very, very good, talented recruiters out there, but but there's ones that are really bad too, and they just ruin it for everybody. If a recruiter can't value your skills without knowing what somebody else paid you, they're a really bad recruiter. So after I read this, I'm like, wow, I don't have a leg to stand on. I must just be I must be a really crappy recruiter in the eyes of Liz here. But anyways, I do think that she has some very valid points, ironically enough. So how do I handle salaries? Well, let me touch on something else in this article, and we'll sum up the article, get the article out of the way, and then we'll go into my op-ed for the most part. So as soon as you give up from Liz's article, as soon as you give up a past salary figure, you lose all your negotiating leverage. Most employers will not hire you in at more than 10% over your last salary, even if they love you. They feel that 10% is enough of a pay bump to go from one job to another. I have run into that. I've also run into people that have gotten 40 and 60% bumps. They have. I can guarantee it. Going into it. So then she says, well, okay, so how do you approach the question? What happens when the person brings it up? So what she says is, stay pleasant, polite, but also draw some boundaries. They'll respect you more. Resist the urge to grovel and bow and scrape and contort yourself into pretzel shapes to please recruiters and hiring managers. Totally get it. Yep. So she says, how do you do it? And she goes into face the fear of saying, gee, as you can imagine, my salary history is personal information. Okay, great. See, I think salary is kind of wacky. I think this kind of thinking is 1950s, 60s, 70s. HR doesn't want anybody talking about their salary internally. I've actually saw some very trendy, progressive information technology startups where everybody knows everybody's salary. And it's very flat organization. There's not a huge hierarchy. But of course, you know who the founders are and you know who the new people are and have less experience in that organization. And it may be just a company of 10 people. But the transparency piece is, yeah, at this level. And when you're here, this is what you're going to get. And this is what I make right now. And I think there is a level of understanding of saying this is how much we make because this is how much we risk or how much we put into the organization. This is how much of our own our time and investment gets put into that. And I do think that there is a level of transparency. If you are an adult and you are professionally mature, there shouldn't be this, I can't believe he gets paid this. Oh my God, that's so crazy. I do so much more work. Oh, ill. I mean, come on. So anyways, so interviewer, what were you earning at your last job? You, in this job search, I'm focusing on jobs in the 50K range. Is that in the ballpark of this position? Interviewer, I think it is. I think that would work. But I'm not the manager, of course. I have to ask what you earned at your last job. So now I wouldn't do that as a recruiter. Okay, so that's hers. I'm focusing on jobs in the 50K range. Is that in the ballpark of this position? That's awesome. Okay. I think the whole article could be summed up with, here's how you do salary negotiation. Don't do it this way. Don't do it that way. Do it this way. Liz doesn't have to go into bashing in recruiters on how they approach this. So the article's out of the way. There's a little bit more to it. And I didn't read the whole article verbatim and just reference some strong points, but go in there and go ahead and check it out. And let me know if you agree with Liz and let her know that I talked about her. So here is how I approach salary negotiation. Because I think that there is a valid point to, so I don't look at it as really negotiation. I don't want it to be negotiation. I think if you get into negotiation, it sucks. It's going to waste a lot of people's time. And you have the potential of wasting a lot of people's time. So I will talk, online, I will put, I would love to put salary ranges of positions. I have done that in the past because then it automatically tells the person like, hey, if you're out of this range, don't apply. And they won't. So it alleviates it right there. And that's like, 1 minute to read a job posting? So you could read it and say, oh, job 50 to 60K. Well, I'm looking for jobs that are 70. Now, job seeker, if you're flexible, then be flexible. But keep in mind, there may be a hard and fast rule on that 50 to 60K. Don't think I want 70, I'm going to apply, and then I'm going to leverage everything and get 70. It could happen. I wouldn't say you should not apply, but don't go in there with strong arming, thinking that you're going to strong arm yourself into 70K if it's posted at a particular range. Frankly, there are some roles that I've actually recruited for union positions that they can't go anything above. It's done. I've talked to people that have done business intelligence data warehousing. If you're not familiar with that skill set, people with any amount of experience that are decent and have been in the industry for more than 5 to 10 years, they can get paid anywhere from in the Madison market, because it's going to range, because they could go to the West or East Coast and probably get even paid more. But I've had them get paid, close to $120K an hour. Oh my God, $120K a year. And if I have a position that's union, and the top of the union scale for whatever, for that role or for that skill set is 110, and they want 125 or 120, it's not going to happen. And I tell them, it's not going to happen. I can't. Some other organizations have the flexibility of doing that. In the one that I was talking about in their union position, I'm not getting around it. That was negotiated between the union and the contract, or the union members of the union and the union and the corporation. That's it. Done deal. So that creates kind of a dynamic there. So going back into how salary and how Shawn would typically handle it. Yes, I have put a field on the pre-screen notes. So when you fill out like, have you ever worked for us? Are you eligible to work in the U.S. or whatever that is? I try to keep it very quick so people can just kind of hammer them out. It's not a huge, long diatribe questionnaire, but just some quick hits that we're going to eventually need anyway, just to make sure that we can actually hire you. And the salary, I'll ask either what is your desired salary and make somebody put in a number, because most of the times they'll put in negotiable because they don't want to be discounted by a number. And true, to Liz's credit, yeah, I don't want to have somebody apply or be totally out of the range because they're just going to waste everybody's time. Yeah, it's not always salary, but come on, let's face it, it's a huge factor. I've read articles, they're like, oh, money's there, money isn't always the deciding factor in a job. And, somebody could be getting paid a certain salary and it's really about the job satisfaction. Yeah, I totally get that, but job salary is still going to be a factor when considering a new opportunity. It just is. Maybe location, maybe job duties, maybe title, maybe scope of the organization and the challenges of the job. Yeah, all those rank pretty high, but somewhere in there is salary, and it's number 1, 2, or 3, period. Call me if you disagree. I'd love to debate that. So somebody puts in their salary. I'll say, what were you making at your current position? Or, frankly, Liz's approach is actually good. And I would actually take that approach, which is what would be your ideal salary for this position? And put a number in there. It's kind of saying like, hey, well, what were you in this job search? I'm focusing on jobs at 50K. Boom. So as a recruiter, I don't ask for negotiating leverage. I really, really don't. I don't care. I don't own the books at the company. I really don't. They're not looking at, Shawn saved $5,000 because he landed this candidate at $5,000 less than what the candidate really wanted, saving the company, $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year. I don't have that metric as a recruiter. My performance isn't based on that. We have a compensation area that deals with all this. So to me, I'm just trying to get the recruiter. As a recruiter, I'm just trying to get that candidate to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager likes that candidate, and they offer that candidate a job, and that candidate says, yeah, I'm all on board. That is my goal. If that person comes in and says, I want 120K, great, good, awesome. I'm all with you. If I can get it for you, great. And what I do is I take that as a middle person and take that to the hiring manager so they don't lowball you and they understand where you're coming from. Because I've even gone to hiring managers and they'll say, oh, he wants 60K, let's offer him 55. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Well, no, we want to. That's our number. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Now I've lost battles and I've won battles like that. And it's not always easy and you have to know who the hiring manager is, but I was doing it to protect the company, because if we're known to do that, then you get that in the marketplace and it just isn't worth, and it's $5,000. If you're a company that's making billions, come on. Let's be reasonable here. Why? I actually had this happen. I actually had somebody do this and they were like nitpicking over 5K for a 6-figure person, like 105 to 110. That's kind of like, they wanted 110. We wanted to offer them 105. I went to the VP, who was actually a VP, right? This wasn't like some IT manager. This was a VP of a large organization. And I said, come on, seriously. I can go to the Apple store and spend $5,000 at the drop of a dime. And we, as an organization, could have a lunch event and spend $5,000. You're not going to kick in 5K for this person just to land them for a position that you like their skill set, you like their experience, you look forward to having them contribute to your organization. You're splitting hairs over 5K. Come on, seriously. All right. So maybe I may actually rethink how I put that on a form, or maybe I don't put it on a form. The thing is with salary and with a lot of the questions that I ask is to really just kind of cut to the chase so that we're not wasting each other's time. If you want salary that's X and I can only get to Y, let's not do the dance and hope that it works out in the end. Let's just cut to the chase. That doesn't mean that you as a candidate and job applicant are that you would not be considered for something else in the same organization. It just may not be this role. And also, I also think that organizations do have and depending on the organization, some are very savvy with what the market calls for when it comes to a particular job in their organization. For example, an organization that I had worked for, they will do market research. They will check the labor and statistics website. They have other third-party, multiple sources that they will run skill sets through, titles through, different markets and cost of living in markets, and they will determine what the scope of that position is, and then what the corresponding salary should be in a range. So they're really not that far off. Now, there may be organizations that don't do that research and they kind of, I think this is about it. But even small companies really have a good idea of either one, what they can afford, and two, what they're asking for. And frankly, as a candidate, you're going to know who's kind of like, they're a startup, they don't really know the market, and they don't have a lot of money, but it sounds like a really great opportunity with growth, whatever. So you either have to determine whether you're going to be able to do that for that organization. And then there's corporations that do some very heavy research in the market, and they want to pay fairly. They want to get you what you deserve. And they already scoped it out correctly. Now, I've also had hiring managers that don't do it right. They think that they need, say, a entry-level person, but the responsibilities that they're putting on the individual is like a manager. And that doesn't work. That's a disconnect between that's a hiring manager that doesn't know what they're doing. Then, what is the point? Are you really trying to genuinely save money by saying, we'll hire a $50K person when usually we have a manager do it at $70K? That's not going to work. You're just going to ruin everything. People are going to leave. They're going to get ticked off. You're going to overwork them. That does not make any sense at all. So hiring managers, you got to scope out your job and understand what you're going to actually have this person do every day. And then based on that, compensation or whoever is going to know what the marketplace is, maybe the recruiter, and say, that's this range. Or HR is going to say that's what this range is for this job, for what they're going to be doing. Yeah. I mean, I've told, managers that are like, there's a disconnect. I'm like, you're getting people that want more money. So what are we doing wrong? Posting's probably wrong. So when I ask people, when I've done recruiting, I'll ask the candidate one of two ways their salary, either what you're currently making or what you would like to make in this particular position. And the second one is probably more in line with what Liz would probably find more acceptable. And the reason I ask that is simply because I don't want you to have to apply through some goofy, backwards configured website, submit your resume that you've had to type up probably 2 or 3 different times, and it doesn't upload correctly. And then whatever, you go through that pain, which probably takes you a good hour. And then I call you or sent you an email, and then you're scheduling or trying to schedule a 15 to 30 minute call with a recruiter. And then we talk for a half hour. So now you're already at least 2 hours into the process. And then all of a sudden, everything sounds great. And I get, maybe I get your salary, maybe I don't. I move you on to the hiring manager. Hiring manager does a phone screen. That's another 30 minutes. Then they want to bring you in for a face-to-face. Then you're looking at least for 2 hours, probably minimum. So now you're like 4.5 hours into the steps. And then they want to hire you. Maybe they want a second round interview, say another 2 hours. Now you're like 6 or 8 hours. So a full day of your time. And then we get to an offer and you're like, you guys aren't even close. Forget it. I'm out of here. Or I found something better that would pay me more or whatever it is. I'm trying to cut it off at 30 minutes, hour and a half, right? Submit your resume. I call you. We talk. It works. We move you on. I want to get to the salary. I want to get to the offer stage and just go, hey, John, hey, Jane, here you go. This is exactly what I spoke to you about. And I don't have a problem giving ranges. I mean, if a candidate's like, you tell me what the salary range is, and I say it's between 50 and 70K, and they say, okay, that'll work. Now, keep in mind, you're going to hear 70K. You didn't hear the 50 as a candidate. We always used to say that in staffing, right? Bill rates, if it was a $50 to $70 bill rate, the client would always hear $50 on the low end. When you talk salary with an individual, then they're getting paid, they always go to the other end. It's just what it is. But keep in mind, just because it's 50 to 70, you're not going to get 70 necessarily. And besides, if it's the top of the end of the scale and merit comes around and you're pegged at the top, you may not get a merit, even if you're a rock star. So keep yourself some room too. That's something to consider, and a lot of people don't know that. Anyways, I think that so I don't think that anything that Liz put out there is I think just the way she kind of framed it, she'll get some people's blood boiling. I mean, when I first read it, I was like, whoa, hold on a second. But I do think it's good. And I think that if somebody says, hey, look, I'm looking for salaries or positions that pay $50K. And I say, okay, we're good. And then when the manager wants to make an offer, I'll say, well, they're looking for a salary that's around $50K. And the manager can go, well, I think they're worth 55 or they're worth 50 or whatever it is. And frankly, if the person counters for $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever, I mean, come on. I mean, fine, whatever. Like I said, I'd rather just put the number on the paper and say, let's do this thing. I've had people negotiate over like $5. I mean, it's freaking ridiculous. But hey, that's their prerogative, and if they get it and they feel happy at the end of the day, super. So email me at Shawn@talentjockey.com or leave a comment in these show notes. It'll be talentjockey.com/010, and let me know how you handle salary negotiations from a recruiting perspective. To answer Shawn's, I think you can actually take Liz's approach and just say, I'm looking for a salary of X, and hope that you don't run into recruiters that are going to discount you. But I mean, they may, but I can't speak for every recruiter that's out there. But I do think that it's good to have some kind of starting point out there and just tell the recruiter. Yeah. So anyways, I appreciate it. Thanks for listening. I'm going to let you go. You have a great, awesome day, awesome week, awesome month. Do what you need to do, and I will catch you later.